Thank you. All right. Hey guys, good morning. How are you? Awesome. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks Product Scoot for having me here. This is such a great honor. I'm just a regular guy, right? I just wanna use this opportunity to do something that I've never done before. So this is an experiment. And just to explain that picture here, I attended a conference a while ago, a design conference called Epicurrents in Yosemite, where like it was one of the best conferences I've ever been to, and they had a lighting workshop, studio lighting workshop. So I got that awesome picture. I didn't have a place to place it, so that's why I'm using it there. But today, I'm here to talk about my experience as a product manager, running being part of this team that's building Adobe XD. How many people here heard of Adobe XD before? All right, cool, a couple. And I actually met a guy who's starting on that similar team at Adobe very soon, so that was pretty cool. And if you have questions later, you can follow me on Twitter and all that. So just before I start, I just wanna just show what I have. I worked for BlackBerry, PayPal, Braintree. I also had my agency in the past in San Diego. I worked for lots of agencies with a lot of Flash websites. I used to teach at UCSD, Art Institute of California, Platt, author on lynda.com, LinkedIn Learning, and I teach a lot of design thinking classes. And I have a daughter, her name is Maya, and I love my family, I love all that. So the main idea here, I could talk about frameworks, I could talk about the processes that we use at Adobe to build things, but things are changing so much. And when I joined Adobe almost like 3 years ago, to be a product manager, I was a developer advocate at PayPal, and I was coming to this world of like PM to build this new thing that I didn't even know what it was. It was a secret thing back then. It was super like close and secret. And in the last 3 years, I made so many mistakes. I did so many things wrong, and I wish I could have, let's say, this is almost like a letter to myself. Like if I had this information back then, things I think would be a lot different. I would have less suffering, I would say. But it was fun, and I learned a lot. So hopefully someone out there will relate to this, and maybe I'll be an actual voice in your head helping you in this like very specific tough moments that you have as a product manager. So again, I'm not going to focus a lot on frameworks. It's going to be around my experience and everything that I went through there. And to organize this information, we know like PMs really like to go to the whiteboard and start creating processes of things like this is phase 1, this is phase 2. And I kind of created the same thing here with the biggest lessons that I had in the last 3 years as Adobe. So the first one is principles. And once you have principles, and it took me some time to get there, but now I live by principles. And XD has principles. And once you go there, I have on my Twitter, you can see my principles for my life, and it's there, it's interesting. And it's helping me to kind of reaffirm things when I need. So I'll say this over and over again, but you are what you think. So you have control over your mind. If you see a lot of negative things, like if you see the news all the time, you feel negative and all that, but you can also be positive, and you can also send positive things to your mind. And this is one thing that helps you bring that back to you when you feel like tired or depressed or something like that. So there's a bouncing thing there, but it's not an animation. So the principles that I'd like to cover here are the principles for XD. So XD is a brand new tool from Adobe. We're working on it for the last 3 years. It started with 4 guys. So it was a startup inside Adobe. And since the very beginning, they had 2 engineers, Anirudh, NJ, Talling was a designer, and Tom was a product manager. So they started this thing called Adobe XD. It was called Project Sparkler back then. And since the very beginning, they defined principles. So the principles for XD were lightweight and approachable, meaning that we know we have Photoshop, we have Illustrator, all these things, but they're kind of hard to learn. They're not like super easy to learn. So it has to be lightweight, super fast, it needs to open fast, it needs to run fast, it has to do a lot of these things, and it has to be easy to learn. Then when we did that, we focused, one of the biggest things that we picked as a core principle inside that number one there was performance. So we're obsessed with performance, and having that principle is really guiding us throughout this journey. And then the second one was remove friction everywhere, meaning that we were looking at existing UX, UI design workflows, and we're not just proposing improvements or trying to make it faster, less clicks and stuff, but we really wanted to change it entirely. Sometimes remove entire processes of that place. So that's the second one. The third one, transparent and open. Transparent meaning that we are working with the community to build XD. So everyone, all the design community is helping us build XD. And we use user voice for that. So user voice is really helping us there. And I'll talk about user voice in a bit. I started user voice for XD 3 years ago. Now the entire company uses user voice for all the apps. So that's really there. And open, this vision that we have to open XD for plugins. So developers using JavaScript can use plugins to extend XD. And that's there since the very beginning. We're going to open that up later this year, but that's there since the very beginning. So having principles, super, super important. And we have like more things on the process, how we build it. For example, we made tough decisions on like having excellence over shortcuts. So if something is better for the user, but it's going to be super hard for engineers and it'll take like 2 years to build, we're going to go the hard way because it means it delivers the right value. There's no workaround. We cannot ship things that are kind of partially there. It has to be 100% the best thing we can do. Quality over scope, so different than other design tools that ship features all the time. We're really focused on quality. So we're shipping less features, but with better quality since the beta days. And then continuous improvements on improving things. We change things based on feedback, and I'll talk about release cycles in a bit. Second tip there that I have is building a great product is a marathon, not a sprint. And this is hard because you see the competition moving. You see, in our case, we have InVision, we have Sketch, we have Framer, all these different tools and services around this UI UX world. And I personally have a lot of respect for these guys because they saw an opportunity, they delivered value. So now we're trying our best to deliver value. But we have to go back to this and remember we're here for the marathon, not for the sprint. And just to test your knowledge here, how old do you think Photoshop is? Yeah, that's good. I was expecting like 10, 12. But Photoshop 1.0 was released 28 years ago. So that was a long time ago. I'm 37 now, and it's crazy. And Illustrator, 30 years. That was the first big app that Adobe had. InDesign, 19 years. After Effects, 25 years. So building good products, mature products takes time and energy. And that's just the 1.0 version of each product. It doesn't mean like it's the very beginning. And for XD, we started 3 years ago, but now we have like 7 months in after version 1.0. That was in October last year. And this is another thing that I like to mention. We at XD, we're changing the company so much, and we're fighting battles so much. And Adobe is a 35-year-old company, and it's hard, right? It can be political. Change is hard. People don't like change, and we're changing so much that Photoshop used to have cycles of releases, for example, at every 18 months. It changed to 9 months. XD ships every month. So imagine that, like the marketing teams, like all the communication teams, like they used to have that time and structure in place. Now they have to do that in a much shorter time every month. So that's there. And we're learning a lot from it. And to reinforce that, another lesson learned that I have is you have to iterate as fast as possible. And it sounds crazy, it sounds hard, like why not do the best thing you do for like 2 years and then release? But we're learning that we have to be lean, and everyone is talking about that. You have to learn as fast as possible to succeed as fast as possible. I would say like almost like you have to fail soon to succeed sooner, right? That's a good saying there that's out there. And for that, the XD team is using pieces of the design thinking framework. I think that's why they hired me like to help with that 3 years ago. I brought that. I didn't have a lot of PM experience. I worked with BlackBerry and PayPal with PMs all the time, but it was the first time that I had to run that. And For the ones that don't know the process, everything starts with a design challenge. In our case, it was like Photoshop and Illustrator were not initially designed for the UX UI challenge of today. People are using multiple tools today to do that. It's much faster, much easier to learn. Then we empathize, and you can interview people. And I have multiple posts on that. If you can look after if you want to learn more about that. You can interview people. You can watch people working. You can go behind and watch how they go through the process. And you can also experience the same thing that they experience. So we do that all the time. We test the same tools, trying to build that empathy to understand. Then we redefine the problem. We prioritize everything. Then we start ideating. And at Adobe, we have 3 core groups. We have product, we have design, and we have engineering. So engineering, of course, is the biggest group. But we're working with those teams to do this together. Then we prototype. Prototyping is super important. And we test. And one thing that I'd like to mention here for testing, I heard a lot about experimentation, and I know it's valuable. It's changing companies like Amazon. It's really useful. But I'm a firm believer that if you go the qualitative route, you can have amazing results. And you can deliver more than just, it's more than value, it's emotional. You can do a lot more because we're doing things for people, right? We are people doing things for people. And going that route is really important. And Don Norman says that you don't need to, when you test things, you don't need to interview more than 5 people. You don't need to test things with more than 5 people. Because once you start testing one thing, you have zero knowledge about the reaction or how that thing would work. But then if you interview one person, then you learn a lot. But then you interview the second person, you learn a little bit more. And at one point, it stabilizes there, and you're not learning as much. So again, iterating, also on the testing phase, it's good to do like interview 5 people, test things with 5 people, and you're going to get enough information to move forward. So instead of interviewing 15 people, do 3 different scenarios and do 5 people each. You're going to learn a lot more than just that thing with 15 people. The power of prototyping, right? Prototyping is so powerful. So what I'm doing here, I'm presenting this thing. First time, this is a prototype. It can go horribly wrong, but I'm giving it a try. But if I fail, I will learn. I will learn today. It's going to be miserably because people are watching online and you're here, but I'm learning. Next time I do this, I'll have more information to improve. I don't want to spend, like Photoshop, for example. We don't have the ability to fail that late, 2 years later anymore, because that means a lot of problems are going to be created. So prototyping, failing early, super important. Another thing that I really like to share here is like listen to your customers a lot. Being a new PM, when I was joining that team, I was like, oh my God, like the industry is so big. I was calling competitors like the wrong name, and because I was new to that. I was new to that tough world of UI UX design as knowing everything, right? But once you start talking to customers and listening to your customers, you start to get a lot of information, and they tell you what the competition is. They tell you. So if you're in doubt, go out there and talk to customers. That's the best thing you can do. And make sure you interview not only the average person, but also like the kid or the old person, like the extreme users there that can help you a lot. So to reinforce that, I found this research fascinating. So the power of listening, the power of telling stories. There was this study at Princeton, and they tracked brain activity levels on a person telling a story and a person listening to that story. So at the best moment of that story, almost like magically, they had the same, like very similar brain levels, like brain activity levels. It was almost like they were connected at a brain level. So telling stories, listening to stories is really, really powerful. So if you're a PM, and one of the best qualities of a PM that I consider, and this is super powerful and necessary at Adobe today, is that if you can empathize, you're going to be a rock star, right? You can go through processes and frameworks, but if you can empathize, you do the right thing. Maybe short term it will be hard like it was for me, but long term it will be worth it. And talking about user voice, so one thing that I did when I started there, we had this new tool called Project Sparkler. It was going to become XD later on, but we're having feedback coming from all over the place. And it was horrible. Like we had DLs, we had forums, like old forums. It was chaos. And to solve that, I looked at all the tools in the market, and I found user voice, and I said, I'll give it a try. So I created Adobe XD.uservoice.com, And here I hacked it a little bit, so we have an area for bugs, an area for feature requests. So now anyone using XD can go to feature requests, for example, and suggest a feature. So for example, this one, fixed elements, has over 4,000 votes, and everyone who votes on that feature subscribes to that need. So imagine this is a dream for PMs, right? If you need to do a research specific to that feature, you can email these guys. And this is like super easy to make sense of information. And they share screenshots, they share comments. This one has over 700 comments. And we're shipping that very soon. So it also helps you with prioritizing stuff. So that was really, really helpful. And Adobe as a company is using that as a tool. And the best thing of user voice, as I think the most rewarding thing for a PM, like using user voice, is that when you change the status from feature started to feature completed, everyone who voted there gets an email saying like, you can now use this thing. And it's super, super powerful and rewarding. And then talk to customers a lot. When you have to test things, this is us at Adobe Max, a big conference in Los Angeles, where not only the PMs were there talking to users, but engineers were there, designers were there. Everyone was there talking to users as much as possible, testing things as much as possible to move fast, to learn fast, to really empathize, right? There's no secret. It's people. If you understand people, if you can talk to any kind of person, you'll learn a lot. Another lesson learned, a big one. XD went from, when I joined, we had like around 30, 40 people, and now it has over 200 people working on it. And you can imagine like, oh, we're going to get a lot more done. It's going to be faster. That's not true. Because we have those principles, quality, performance, that means we have to have a lot more processes now to control all that, to make sure quality is there, performance is there, and that delays everything. So you as a PM going through from a small, like say, startup to a big team, you see that it is going to get slow. It can be frustrating, but you have to change your mindset. Okay, now we're getting to a more mature scenario, and that's not easy. I had a hard time. Why we have to use Jira now? Why we have to use like all these different things? But it is necessary, and it pays off. You just have to keep changing. So this is the about screen like on XD. As you can see, there's a lot of people involved. Teams in San Francisco, teams in India, teams in Romania, remote people. So this is a huge deal for Adobe. We're going like with everything we can to deliver everything we can, but without being distracted by what's out there. So this is another segue like to that. Like things change all the time, right? And as a PM, it's really, really important to understand that. And I think when my voice talking to me, like let's say if I had that opportunity, or maybe my voice would talk to you when this happens to you, is every time you see something, let's say you spend a lot of time on this presentation or on this roadmap, and then you have to present, and then you get all this feedback, it's crazy, and it has to change. Instead of getting frustrated, just think of this slide. You know, like, oh, it's okay. It changes a lot, and it's part of the process, especially if the team is big. You have to go through this mindset. You have to understand it will change. So everything you put out is temporary, is a hypothesis instead of this masterpiece that cannot be changed. So get used to that. And I had to learn that the hard way, but I did. And another thing that I really like to highlight, I heard this from one of our leaders called Scott Belsky. He's amazing, and we're all like firm believers that you don't need to be the first, but if you do the best job empathizing, iterating, and validating your stuff, you can build the best thing possible. And over time, it can take 1 year, it can take 28 years, you will have the best thing there, and you will succeed. That's what we're trying with XD. And the last piece of advice, maybe at a personal level, throughout my whole life, no one taught me that. No one taught that for an effective PM, this is important. And this is so hard, but it is a skill. It's not something that you have and you're like, it's not like a fixed mindset thing. This is a skill that you can develop. And this is one of the most powerful things that a PM can have. And sometimes it's faking it, but you have to, right? It's like you're a leader and you're influencing people. I remember like the first days that was talking to my engineering team, my design team on the mobile piece for XD, I came from the agency world. I did lots of Flash projects. I built my entire career on top of Flash as a developer designer there. And all of a sudden, I was telling the guys that created the Flash player there, like, to do stuff. That was terrifying, right? It was like, oh my God, what's happening here? And I wish I had this voice saying, no, relax, be confident. Even if you're not, be confident. This is a skill that you can develop, and it matters. It will hurt you if you're not force yourself to be like that. And why this happens, right? One thing that I found fascinating is that we all, when we are kids, we're super creative. Like, we do things all the time, but then society, our parents, our friends, they keep saying, like, no, this is bad, no, that's wrong. Like, and you start, like, losing that confidence over time. But you were confident. I'm pretty sure everyone had, like, amazing masterpieces, like, from childhood. But you were confident, so you can get back to it if you force yourself. You can develop that skill, and this is so powerful, so important. So my suggestion is, and I'm doing that a lot now, like for the last 1 year, 2 years, every time I go to a meeting, even if I don't have, like, the slides for it, like, I don't have everything prepared because we don't have time to do anything anymore, or for this talk, for example, I didn't rehearse. I'm just being honest, I'm being open, I'm being vulnerable. Just have that voice in your mind saying, like, be confident, even if you're not. Even if saying that you don't have the slides, that's not going to help at all. Like, why? Why do that to yourself? Like, be confident, and be that flexible PM that can do things at the right time, right? Like, and at that crazy chaos world. So my suggestion is, like, if you're scared of a meeting, of a talk, just hear my voice. Be confident. And try, experiment, right? I'm giving it a try. I'm having a great time now. And just try. And if it works, partially, next time it will work better and better and better. And this is the best thing I think you can develop. And the last one is that everything will be okay, right? That's like the same from that. I think I heard that in the movie. Everything will be okay in the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end yet. So with that, all my, I say, guiding principles and my learnings are there, and I'll share the slides later. I also do a lot of live streams, so every week, again, I'm crazy. Like, I saw the guys doing the live streams there. I like to take risks, so I do it all by myself. So I run OBS, Wirecast right there. I know how crazy. I made all the possible mistakes you can ever imagine in a live stream, syncing, but I'm doing that. I'm putting myself out there, trying to be confident and trying to learn. So we go live at every Monday at 11 a.m. Pacific time on Facebook. So if you want to keep the conversation going, please go there. And hopefully this was informative, and this is a letter to my past, but hopefully a letter to new ones. So thank you very much.